Welcome back, guardians of Stardust and Whispers. Welcome to the velvet-lit stage of Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Tonight the curtain trembles, the air thick with a hush that feels like thunder waiting to burst, because a story we never wished to tell has spilled into the moonlit hours. Make yourselves comfortable, dim the world around you, and lean closer to this glowing screen, because what follows is not a tidbit tossed to the wind, but a living, breathing tale of devotion and doubt, a love saga pressed between an ending and a beginning that aches like a bruise. Before we step into the storm, let me invite you, heart to heart, to join our family. Subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, ring that bell so you never miss the shiver of truth, and if our relentless chase through shadows and questions warms your faith in us, consider becoming a supporter. Your presence lights our path where others fear to walk. Now breathe, because the night has claws. It all began when the city slept in folded silence, when the line between a dream and the blue glow of a phone turns ghostly and thin. We thought the evening had settled into harmless routine, timelines drifting like leaves on a slow river. And then, like a bell tolling through glass, a notification rattled millions of wrists and pockets. One post. One picture. One caption that sounded like a door closing in the dark. Ebru Sahin, radiant and fierce, our red-haired enigma whose gaze can turn applause into confession, shared an image that looked, at first glance, like art for art's sake. But the image carried a mood that pulled you closer, as if the screen itself were a window frost-kissed from within. It was black and white, austere and soft all at once. Ebru stared past the camera as if the horizon had an answer she feared to hear. Her expression was all winter sun, tender, cold, unblinking, and yet with a steel thread of resolve woven through it. The photo alone could have been a poem. But it was the caption that loosed the avalanche. Words weighed with the kind of quiet that drowns out whole rooms. She wrote, in a line that felt like the echo of a last candle going out, that the silence from the one who matters most can be the loudest answer of all, that she would not spend another dawn waiting for a signal that refuses to appear. In an instant, the digital city burst into flame. Fingers began to fly, hearts began to pound, and the first name people tagged, of course, was Akın Akinozu. The conclusion rose like smoke. This arrow belonged to him, to the man whose stillness can read like a locked diary. Was it a warning shot or the final page? Was the glass already broken? The fandom, who have breathed with this love through every rumor and glance, feared they were hearing the bell of goodbye. In the space of minutes, loyalties drew their lines like tides splitting a beach. Two camps emerged, not merely divided but vibrating with raw belief. On one side gathered the defenders of Ebru, insisting she had waited far too long, offering the warmth of their empathy like coats in a storm, and saying that if patience turns into erasure, it is not patience anymore. They reminded the world of how much she has given, her openness, her vulnerability, the way her eyes speak volumes before her lips even part. To them, the caption was a boundary finally spoken aloud. She cannot be a silhouette in someone else's dusk. She must be the lantern in her own night. On the other side stood those who swear by Akın's quiet strength. They spoke of his caution as a shelter, not a dismissal, as if his silence were a careful hand laid over a flame to keep it from the wind. They insisted he is not playing with hearts but protecting one, building away from prying eyes, putting stones in place for something that needs time to stand. When he asks for patience, they argued, it is not a refusal, it is an unspoken oath. Not everything grows under a spotlight. Not everything that matters can be photographed. And I turn to you, the Turkish Spotlight Secrets family, the ones who read glances like sheet music, the ones who have lived through their pauses as if they were your own. Where does your heart bend in this storm? Does love need to be shouted to be real, or is love the kind of treasure that grows most fiercely in the hush of two people who understand? Your thoughts are the pulse of this channel. Leave them below, let the world know what you see in this tangle of silence and longing. And if our late-night watch comforts you, tap subscribe, keep the bell singing, and know that your support keeps these lights bright. Rumor claims that Akın, in his measured cadence, offered an answer away from the crowd, words like a calm sea under a bruised sky. He is said to have told her that what they have built cannot be argued in public, that the world's roar should not drown out the melody only they can hear. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical, just a reminder that their story was not born in the comments section and should not die there. Whether every syllable is true, whether the phrasing was this or that, no one can swear. But the power of it, the gravity, spread like sparks in dry grass. There is, however, a detail almost lost in the noise, a detail our most devoted sleuths dragged into light. 2 nights before the post, Ebru and Akın were seen at an impossibly exclusive restaurant. At first, it sounded like a sigh after a long week, a date wrapped in velvet and candlelight. But witnesses described something else, not a single table glimmering with shared jokes and leaning shoulders, but 2 figures occupying the same space with a distance you could feel from across the room. They did not look like enemies. They looked like lovers trying to rescue a language they could no longer speak fluently. The air around their table, by all accounts, felt sharp enough to cut. Did that dinner plant the seed for the late-night confession? Did something said over bread and salt lodge in Ebru's chest like a splinter she could no longer carry in secret? The theories, oh, they multiply like reflections in a corridor of mirrors. Some murmur that Ebru wanted to step forward. A promise, a ring, a line drawn in permanent ink, and that Akın asked for more time, not out of hesitation but out of reverence for what promises mean. Others whisper of jealousy that had been fed by shadows and third-party murmurs, half-truths that grew teeth once they were left alone in the dark. But whatever the cause, those who know her soul insist her post was not a burst of unspent rage. It was deliberate, carved word by word from a place both tender and bruised. Close friends, in hushed circles, echo that she longs not to be the outline of uncertainty but the bright answer at noon, no more half-light, no more guessing. And so the world refreshes and refreshes and refreshes again. Every vibration feels like a heartbeat skipping. Will there be a picture of hands clasped by dawn, an Insta story that breaks the clouds with a simple, trembling smile? Will Ebru delete the photo and replace it with a quiet sunset, as if to say the storm has passed? Will Akın release a statement that threads a needle through every wound and sews it closed with care? The not knowing keeps us all upright long past bedtime, staring at nothing and everything. Picture this with me, the scene behind curtains no camera can show. Ebru, in a room that remembers their laughter, holding a phone that suddenly weighs like grief, waiting for a message that reads like a hug. On the other side of the city, perhaps, Akın walking the edge of his thoughts, feeling the white-hot stare of a million opinions, worried that any step he takes will be the wrong one simply because it is watched. It is cruel to be human under glass. Crueler still to be human while holding another person's heart. But if there is something we must admit, it is this: the intensity between them has always been an ocean, and even their storms resemble poetry. They do not bicker for sport, they do not ignite for applause. They ache, and that ache has always been part of the magnet that pulls them close. This is not gossip tossed like confetti. This is the sound of 2 rhythms struggling to find a shared beat after the music has changed. Our community is incandescent, the boards are full, every tiny movement is parsed as if it were an ancient rune. A like becomes a lighthouse. An unfollow becomes a quake. A song lyric posted at midnight becomes a roadmap for fortune-tellers and lovers alike. It is both beautiful and terrifying how much meaning we can squeeze from a single line when 2 hearts we admire stand at a crossroads. Let me say this, too, for those who doubt the sincerity of such storms, admiration does not make us blind, it makes us careful. We can hold them in our affection and still demand truth. We can crave a happy ending and still insist on clarity. And clarity, for Ebru, feels like the only currency she will accept now. She has spoken it in the way her shoulders sit, in the way her eyes no longer wait at the door. And for Akın, sincerity looks like restraint, like building an answer so strong that it can bear the weight of the future without needing applause to stay upright. Back to that dinner. Think of the glasses sweating under candlelight, the fork left to cool untouched, the waiter who knows when to pass by without asking the question he's bursting with. 2 people who know each other's breaths counting seconds in silence. A word dropped like a pebble into water, and the ripples refusing to fade. Perhaps that was the moment a line was drawn. Perhaps the phone call that followed was the one that frayed. Perhaps the night asked a question that would not stop asking. For now, we stand here as the watchmen of their story. We at Turkish Spotlight Secrets are not fortune tellers, but we are students of the human heart, and what we know is this: a love like theirs does not go gentle. It either digs in, gathers itself back, and re-emerges with an oath sealed in private, or it breaks with tenderness and leaves behind a sky of lessons. A public reconciliation would be a sunrise. A dignified silence would be a moon. Either way, we will witness it with you, with respect and attention. Tell us, beloved audience, if you could send one sentence to Ebru tonight, what would you say? If you could whisper one truth to Akın, what truth would you choose? Would you ask him to speak out or to hold her hand away from the crowd? Would you ask her to trust the time he needs, or to honor the time she has already given? The comments are open like a window in spring. Bring your softest words. And if this vigil speaks to your heart, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, ring the bell, and, if you wish to help keep our lanterns shining, consider joining us. Here is the promise we make: we will remain, eyes on the horizon, listening for the softest sign. The first shared photo, the cautious emoji under a post, the subtle reappearance of a necklace, the travel bag that appears at an airport where neither of them was expected. No sign is too quiet for us to hear, no note too faint for us to catch. We will carry this story with the gentleness it deserves, remembering that behind every headline are two people who feel the same fear and hope that we do, only multiplied by cameras and relentless light. The night is long, but not endless. Sometimes love takes the long way home. Sometimes it stands outside in the rain until the key turns. And sometimes it walks away softly, leaving the door ajar for kindness to follow. What will this be for Ebru Şahin and Akın Akinozu? The next hours might tell us more than the last month did. One gesture could rewrite everything, one sentence, carefully chosen, could set the ground back under their feet. Or we might learn that the bravest thing they can do is accept that even great love must breathe in separate rooms for a while. As we close this chapter of tonight's watch, remember this: your voices matter here. Your tenderness, your insight, your yearning for honesty. This is what makes Turkish Spotlight Secrets a home. Tell us which other star stories you want us to follow through the alleys and spotlights of this dazzling world. If there are other couples whose quiet we should listen to, other romances singing faintly in the background, bring their names to our door. Thank you for sharing this charged, trembling hour with us. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, and, if your heart says so, become a supporter so we can keep walking into the hush where truth hides. Until our next update, keep your eyes bright and your minds gentle. May the next time we meet be to celebrate a handclasp, not a goodbye, a window opening, not a door closing. This is Turkish Spotlight Secrets, signing off for the night, standing watch until the first light appears.